Hey man, it's over with for Mystical, man. He just pled guilty to this whole situation with this rape case or whatever.
This comes after he previously pleaded guilty to sexual battery and extortion charges in a different case back in 2003 and was sentenced to 6 years in prison in 2012.
Mystikal is heading to prison for the next 2 decades. But it's a message he sent from behind bars before sentencing that has people talking. According to Mystikal, he might not survive prison at all. "They'll kill me." That's the phrase that circulated, raw and unfiltered, from a man sitting in Ascension Parish jail with no bond, no release date, and a 20-year sentence closing in. This wasn't a first-timer panicking. This would be Mystikal's third long-term imprisonment, and by every measure, the most severe one he'd ever faced. He knew exactly what prison was. He'd lived it before. And still, something about this time felt different to him. Here's what put him there. In July 2022, a woman reported being raped at Mystikal's home in Prairieville, a quiet suburb in Ascension Parish outside Baton Rouge. According to the allegations, Mystikal accused her of stealing from him, then physically assaulted her, pulling her hair, punching her repeatedly, before forcing her to pray with him and sexually assaulting her. She said he took her car keys and phone to keep her from leaving or calling for help, and that he only let her go after forcing her to send him money through Cash App. She was treated at a hospital for visible injuries and identified him to police there. Deputies later searched his home and found methamphetamine, marijuana, Xanax, heroin, and drug paraphernalia, adding additional charges on top of first-degree rape, false imprisonment, domestic abuse battery by strangulation, simple robbery, and criminal damage to property. At his bond hearing, his attorney argued for release. His mother and his business manager stood up in court, offering to personally monitor him. The judge said no, citing his history, not one incident, but a documented pattern stretching back over 20 years. Mystikal was held without bond from that point forward, which meant nearly 4 years sitting in Ascension Parish jail, in general population, before his case was ever decided by a jury. Every holiday, every birthday, every season of those 4 years happened behind bars before a single verdict came down. The sheriff's office made clear from day one that his fame wouldn't buy him different treatment. No protective wing, no special consideration, just general population alongside men who had every reason to know exactly who he was and exactly what he'd been charged with. To understand why that mattered so much, you have to understand who Mystikal was before any of this. Michael Lawrence Tyler was born September 22, 1970, and New Orleans built his entire sound. He signed with Big Boy Records in 1994, re-released through Jive as his major label debut the following year, then moved to Master P's No Limit Records, releasing Unpredictable in 1997, Ghetto Fabulous in 1998, and Goodfellas in 1999 as part of the 504 Boys. His delivery drew comparisons to Little Richard and James Brown, the kind of comparison that signals something genuinely generational in a performer's voice. His album Let's Get Ready debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, his only chart-topping album, carried by the Neptunes-produced hit Shake Ya Ass, which earned him a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Solo Performance. His 2001 album Tarantula brought him 2 more Grammy nominations the same year, for Best Rap Album and Best Male Rap Solo Performance. He collaborated with the Neptunes, Ludacris, Lil Jon, and Mariah Carey, appearing on her Rainbow album. By every measure, this was a legitimate star with real crossover reach, spoken about in the same breath as Master P, Birdman, and Lil Wayne. Then, in 2002, everything started to crack. He was arrested after a hairstylist accused him and 2 bodyguards of forcing her into a sexual act after accusing her of stealing checks. He pleaded guilty to sexual battery and extortion, and in 2004 was sentenced to 6 years in prison, serving the full term before his release in 2010. That conviction required him to register as a sex offender for life. While incarcerated, he was also convicted federally for failing to file tax returns. He walked out in 2010, carrying both state and federal convictions, back into an industry that had largely moved past him, though he tried to rebuild anyway, talking publicly about being grateful for a second chance, and using his time inside to write music and memoirs. That second chance never fully materialized. In 2012, he was jailed for 3 months on misdemeanor domestic abuse charges. In 2017, he was arrested again on charges including first-degree rape and kidnapping, spending roughly 18 months in jail before a grand jury declined to indict him, and the charges were dropped. To some, that outcome meant the system had failed the alleged victim. To others, it meant the system had worked as it should. Either way, the pattern was already 2 decades deep by the time the 2022 Ascension Parish case began. This time was different from the start, because this time it ended in a guilty plea rather than dropped charges. On March 17, 2026, Tyler pleaded guilty to third-degree rape with a sentencing cap of 20 years, a significant concession from prosecutors, since a conviction on the original first-degree rape charge would have carried a mandatory life sentence. But almost immediately after signing that deal, he tried to take it back. His legal team filed a motion to withdraw the guilty plea, arguing he hadn't had sufficient time to consider the consequences and had been under significant emotional distress when he agreed to it. When that motion failed, he filed another motion, this time to withdraw the motion to withdraw his plea. A man spinning in circles, watching the door close in real time. At sentencing, the victim addressed the court directly, describing how Mystikal choked her, pulled braids from her hair, and raped her, asking the judge to impose the maximum sentence. Mystikal responded to the courtroom that if he did that to her, he deserved the max. Whether that was genuine remorse or simple resignation, nobody can say for certain. The judge gave him the full 20 years, with no chance of early release or probation. He's 55 years old. 20 years with no parole at that age functions as something close to a life sentence regardless of how the paperwork is labeled. He'll be 75 when it ends, if it ends. That's the context behind the message that circulated from inside the jail. He wasn't speaking abstractly. He was a man in general population, carrying sex offense charges that every other inmate around him could read plainly on his file. Inside a facility that had explicitly stated he'd receive no special treatment because of who he used to be. While all of this played out across nearly 4 years of pre-trial detention and court delays, the outside world had already made up its mind. His reputation shifted hard. Fans who once saw him as a defining voice of the no-limit era increasingly associated his name primarily with the allegations instead. Labels kept their distance, features dried up, festival bookings disappeared. The music industry didn't wait for a verdict to render its own judgment, and the longer he sat behind those walls, the more permanent that distance became. What makes the fear in that message land as hard as it does isn't just the severity of the sentence. It's the trajectory underneath it. A man with a #1 album, multiple Grammy nominations, and collaborations with some of the biggest names in music, watching that entire legacy get overtaken piece by piece by a pattern of allegations spanning more than 2 decades. The talent was real, the crossover success was real, and now the most honest thing he's said publicly in years is 2 words sent from a jail cell, stripped of everything fame used to provide him. They'll kill me. Whether that's a literal fear of what could happen to him in general population, or something closer to a man finally reckoning with the full weight of what his life has cost everyone around him, including himself, that message now sits against 20 years of silence ahead. What do you think this sentence actually means for his legacy going forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more breakdowns like this one.